If you think every Ford engine is built tough, this video may change your mind. Some engines look great on paper, sound powerful in ads, and even feel smooth on the first drive, but later they can bring costly repairs, strange failures, and non-stop headaches. In this video, we break down 5 engines that many owners wish they had avoided. Stay with us because the problems start small, then get serious, and the final engine on this list surprises almost everyone. At number 1 is Ford's 6.0-liter Power-Stroke diesel engine, 2003 to 2007 Super Duty. When people hear Power-Stroke diesel, they usually think of strength, towing power, and long engine life. And yes, the 6.0-liter Power-Stroke from Ford Motor Company can feel strong when it's running right. But here's the problem. Many owners learn the hard way that this engine hides a costly weakness inside its cooling system. The biggest trouble starts with the engine oil cooler. In this engine, coolant flows through tiny passages inside the cooler to control oil temperature. Over time, debris and rust particles in the coolant clog those narrow channels. Once that happens, coolant flow drops. Less coolant flow means hotter oil, and hotter oil slowly damages other parts of the engine. It's like a chain reaction waiting to happen, and that's where things get worse. When the oil cooler begins to fail, the EGR cooler usually follows. With poor coolant flow, the EGR cooler overheats and cracks. That can send coolant into the exhaust, create white smoke, and in some cases even lead to head gasket failure. Suddenly, what started as a small cooling issue turns into a major repair bill that can reach thousands of dollars. What makes this frustrating is that many drivers don't notice the early warning signs. The truck may still run strong, it may still tow fine, but behind the scenes, heat is building, pressure is rising, and damage is slowly stacking up. By the time symptoms become obvious, repairs are often expensive and urgent. This doesn't mean every 6.0-liter Power-Stroke is doomed. Some run great for years if owners upgrade the oil cooler, maintain the cooling system, and fix problems early. But if you buy one without knowing this risk, you could end up paying far more than you expected. On number 2 is Ford's 6.4-liter Power-Stroke diesel. When the 6.4-liter Power-Stroke diesel arrived in Super Duty Fords, many buyers thought Ford had finally fixed the problems of the earlier diesel engines. On paper, it looked impressive with more power, smoother acceleration, and better emissions technology. But once these Fords hit real roads and real workloads, owners began discovering that this engine carried some very expensive weaknesses. One of the biggest trouble spots sits inside the cooling and emissions system. The EGR cooler in the 6.4-liter often fails due to heat stress and poor durability. When it cracks or leaks, coolant disappears, engine temperatures climb, and overheating becomes a real risk. At the same time, radiators on these trucks have a reputation for leaking earlier than expected. Combine coolant loss with rising heat, and internal damage becomes a serious possibility. Then there's the piston issue. Some 6.4-liter engines suffer from cracked pistons, especially under heavy towing or tuned performance setups. A cracked piston doesn't just reduce power, it can destroy compression and lead to a full engine rebuild. That kind of repair can cost more than what some older trucks are worth. But the emissions system is where many owners feel the real frustration. This engine uses a diesel particulate filter, or DPF, to trap soot from the exhaust. In theory, it helps the environment. In reality, it often clogs faster than expected, especially if the truck does short trips or city driving. When the DPF clogs, fuel consumption rises, power drops, and regeneration cycles become frequent. That means more fuel burned just to clean the filter and more money leaving your wallet. And here's the hidden issue that really scares buyers: fuel dilution. During regeneration, extra fuel gets injected into the system to burn off soot in the DPF. Some of that fuel slips past the piston rings and mixes with engine oil. Over time, this thins the oil and reduces lubrication. Owners sometimes check their dipstick and think, "Wow, my oil level is high." But what they're really seeing is oil mixed with diesel fuel, and that mixture can accelerate engine wear dramatically. The result is an engine that can feel strong when new, but becomes costly as miles add up. Repairs stack up, maintenance costs climb, and resale value drops once buyers know the risks. That's why the 6.4-liter Power-Stroke often leaves owners with regret. It promised modern diesel performance, but for many drivers, it delivered modern diesel repair bills. Now talk about the number 3 worst engine on our list, which is early EcoBoost 4-cylinder and 3-cylinder. When small EcoBoost engines first appeared, they sounded like the perfect modern solution. Turbo power, better fuel economy, and smaller engines doing the job of bigger ones all look like a smart move from Ford Motor Company. And when these engines are healthy, they really do feel quick and efficient. But early versions of the 1.0-liter, 1.6-liter, and some early 2.0-liter EcoBoost engines developed a reputation that many owners wish they never experienced. One of the most serious concerns involves coolant leaks. Some early small EcoBoost engines suffer from weak cooling system components and poorly routed coolant passages. Over time, coolant can slowly leak out without obvious signs. As coolant drops, temperatures rise. If the engine overheats even once, the damage can be severe. In some early 2010s models, overheating has even led to cracked engine blocks. That's not a small repair, that's often an engine replacement. Then comes the turbocharger. Since these engines rely heavily on turbo boost to make power, the turbo becomes a critical part of daily driving. But turbo failures aren't rare on early EcoBoost models. Oil supply problems, clogged oil lines, or poor maintenance can starve the turbo of lubrication. When that happens, performance drops fast. You may hear whining noises, see smoke, or feel the car suddenly lose power. And replacing a turbocharger isn't cheap. But the most surprising issue for many owners hides deep inside the engine: the wet belt timing system. Unlike traditional timing belts that run dry, these belts operate inside the engine oil. In theory, this design reduces noise and friction. In practice, early versions can wear down faster than expected. As the belt ages, small rubber particles can break off and circulate in the oil. Those particles can clog the oil pickup screen, restricting oil flow to the engine. Once oil flow drops, internal parts lose lubrication, and catastrophic engine damage can follow very quickly. What makes this frustrating is that these problems don't always appear right away. The car might feel great for years, it might drive smoothly and deliver excellent fuel economy, but once these issues begin, repair costs can escalate fast, sometimes beyond what the car is worth. At number 4 is the 3.5-liter EcoBoost V6. When the 3.5-liter EcoBoost V6 first showed up in the Ford Motor Company F-150, it shocked everyone. A turbo V6 that could outpull V8s, deliver strong torque, and still save fuel? That sounded like the future of trucks. And for many owners, the engine does feel powerful and smooth. But the early 2011 to 2012 versions carried a few hidden problems that can turn excitement into frustration. One of the strangest issues comes from the intercooler system. In humid conditions or during steady cruising, condensation can build up inside the intercooler. Then, when the driver suddenly accelerates hard, like merging onto a highway or towing uphill, that trapped moisture can get sucked into the engine. A sudden stumble, hesitation, or misfire right when you need power the most. Some drivers describe it as the truck briefly falling on its face. Ford later updated parts and software, but early trucks still show this behavior if they haven't been updated. Another concern develops over time and usually traces back to maintenance. The 3.5-liter EcoBoost uses a timing chain system that depends heavily on clean, healthy engine oil. If oil changes are skipped or delayed, the chain and tensioners can wear faster than expected. As the chain stretches, the engine may trigger camshaft timing errors, rattle loudly on cold starts, or run rough. If ignored long enough, that stretch can throw off valve timing and lead to serious internal damage, the kind that comes with a very large repair bill. Then there are the ignition issues. Early EcoBoost engines often develop misfires due to carbon tracking on spark plugs or worn coil boots. Turbo engines run hotter and under higher pressure than naturally aspirated ones, so ignition components work harder. When plugs or coils begin to fail, the truck may shake, lose power, or throw repeated check engine codes. It's not always a catastrophic problem, but it can become an annoying cycle of repairs if the root cause isn't fixed properly. This engine isn't weak. In fact, it's incredibly capable when maintained correctly. Many 3.5-liter EcoBoost trucks run hundreds of thousands of miles with strong performance, but early models demand good maintenance and updated parts. Without that care, small issues can stack up and become expensive headaches. Now at number 5 is the Ford 6.8-liter Triton V10. The 6.8-liter Triton V10 from Ford Motor Company has always been known as a workhorse. You'll find it in heavy-duty trucks, vans, and motorhomes where reliability matters more than speed. And to be fair, this engine can run for a very long time. But depending on the year you buy, the Triton V10 can also bring one of the most frustrating maintenance headaches Ford owners have ever dealt with: spark plug problems that go in two completely different directions. Let's start with the early models from the late 90s into the early 2000s. These engines have cylinder heads with very few threads holding each spark plug in place. The heads are made of aluminum, which is softer than steel, and under heavy load or heat cycles, those threads can weaken. When that happens, the spark plug can literally blow out of the cylinder head while driving. Owners often hear a loud pop followed by a ticking noise and sudden loss of power. Fixing it usually means installing a thread insert or repairing the head, not a cheap or quick job. Then Ford tried to improve the design in later versions and created the opposite problem. In many 2004 to 2008 Triton V10 engines, the spark plugs sit deep in narrow wells and use a long two-piece design. Over time, carbon buildup forms around the lower part of the plug. When a mechanic tries to remove it, the plug can snap in half, leaving part of it stuck inside the engine. Removing those broken pieces requires special tools and patience, and the labor cost alone can surprise owners who expected a simple tune-up. Beyond spark plugs, there are a couple of common wear issues that show up across many Triton V10 years. PCV hoses tend to crack with age, creating vacuum leaks that lead to rough idle, poor fuel economy, and warning lights. At the same time, exhaust manifold bolts often rust or snap, especially in colder climates or vehicles used for heavy towing. When those bolts break, exhaust leaks develop, creating loud ticking sounds and reduced efficiency. The Triton V10 itself is not a weak engine internally. Many run for hundreds of thousands of miles in commercial use, but these design quirks mean ownership can become frustrating if maintenance isn't handled carefully and proactively. Buying a Ford vehicle can be a great decision, but not every engine from Ford Motor Company has lived up to its reputation. Some engines promised power, efficiency, or durability, yet ended up costing owners more in repairs, downtime, and frustration than they expected. That's exactly why this list matters in 2026, when used trucks and cars with these engines are still widely available on the market. The main lesson here isn't that these engines are all bad. Many still run strong today. The real takeaway is that buyers need to know what they're getting into. If you understand the risks, check maintenance history, and budget for upgrades or repairs, some of these engines can still be worthwhile. But if you buy blindly, the savings on purchase price can disappear fast once repair bills start stacking up.